Post-9/11 surveillance has left a generation of Muslim Americans in a shadow of distrust, and fearMohamed Bahe tries not to remember the overwhelming pain he felt the night he learned a volunteer with his organization, Muslims Giving Back, was a paid informant for the New York City Police Department. In 2011, Bahe, a Muslim American whose family came to the U.S. from Algeria, had spent months kickstarting his community volunteer group, focused on feeding the homeless and delivering food to families in need. The group worked with different mosques near where he lived in Queens, and its members were becoming familiar faces in a community that had grown wary of outsiders. The heightened scrutiny of law enforcement on Muslim communities had mosque-goers skeptical of people they had not seen before. Mosques, once the center of social life in a community, had become a quiet place where people felt like a stranger could be an informant or an undercover police officer. Bahe's work came crashing down when a volunteer, who had become a familiar face, confessed on Facebook to be a paid informant of the NYPD, tasked with spying on other Muslims. Bahe's group had been watched for over a year, the volunteer said. The community then stopped working with Bahe's group. A lot of our members were completely traumatized and disappeared. They were not even returning our phone calls because they were so scared, and I think it destroyed their morale. It destroyed everything they ever believed in, because that was one of our hopes, to give a positive image of our religion, Bahe said. I was angry, I felt betrayed, I felt loss. Not only was I being spied on, but my own community kicked us out. No one trusted us anymore, he added.
The federal government invested nearly $8 trillion in the wars that followed 9/11, according to an analysis by the Costs of War Project at Brown University released this month. About $1.1 billion of that has been spent on preventing terrorism at home. Counterterrorism efforts in the U.S. have taken various forms since then: new government agencies, surveillance programs, and the loosening of long-standing law enforcement guidelines that made it easier to carry out intelligence investigations on citizens without the same level of evidence, often resulting in the profiling of Muslim Americans on the basis of religion or country of national origin in violation of protections provided by the Constitution. Though it's hard to quantify how many Muslim Americans have been affected, since such government programs are often secret or classified, being surveilled has left a generation of Muslim Americans struggling with feelings of distrust and fear. It left such a disgusting taste in our mouth that this country is never going to accept you, Bahe said of how his community reacted to the realization they'd been surveilled. National security programs and their reach went through significant changes in the period that followed 9/11. The Patriot Act, passed 45 days after September 11th, was one of the first steps in drastically changing U.S. surveillance, making it easier for the federal government to monitor citizens in the name of searching for domestic threats. It expanded law enforcement's ability to access people's phone records, bank records, and other personal information in the name of counterterrorism and national security. Simultaneously, then-President George W. Bush secretly authorized the National Security Agency to eavesdrop on Americans' international phone calls without court-approved warrants. At the same time, the FBI loosened guidelines around how law enforcement can conduct intelligence-gathering investigations, changes outlined in a report from the Brennan Center for Justice, a nonprofit law and public policy institute affiliated with the NYU School of Law. The rules, known as the Levi Guidelines, implemented in the 1970s, limited the information law enforcement could gather about people and established different tiers of investigations: preliminary, limited, and full investigations. Full investigations could only be conducted on the basis of clear and articulable facts that indicated a person or group were a threat to national security. This helped prevent the agency from going on fishing expeditions into protest movements or minority communities. The guidelines were built on the idea that government monitoring of individuals or groups because they hold unpopular or controversial political views is intolerable and dramatically reduced the number of domestic security investigations, the Brennan Center report noted. This changed when new guidelines were set in place by the U.S. Attorney General in 2002 and again in 2008. While the 2002 guidelines allowed the FBI a broad discretion in checking out leads that they deemed to be threatening, they stopped it providing the tools of a full-blown investigation. The 2008 guidelines broadened the FBI's intelligence gathering even further, allowing agents to look into the lives of Americans without any factual predicate to start an investigation, meaning there no longer has to be any evidence of suspicion, just an authorized purpose. The authorized purpose could be, well, I want to prevent terrorism, so I'm going to go spy on this Muslim community in Dearborn, Michigan, for example, said Faiza Patel, a national security expert with the Brennan Center. 13 years after they were created, these guidelines remain in place, allowing surveillance and monitoring, including of the American Muslim community, to continue. An FBI spokesperson says the agency conducts all its operations in accordance with legal requirements, including the Constitution. Post-9/11 The FBI's resources to combat counterterrorism were significantly enhanced in order to protect the U.S. and U.S. security interests abroad, the FBI said in a statement. We use all available and lawful tools, resources, and techniques to support ongoing investigations that are predicated on criminal activity. The FBI did not respond to additional requests for comment about the Levi guidelines.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.